The lunchroom buzzed with conversation as employees took their break, everyone except for one person. Maria, the janitor, stood by the counter, stomach growling, as the manager, Mr. Lawson, shot her a cold look. "Lunch is for real employees," he scoffed, waving her away like she was invisible. The room fell silent, but no one dared to speak up. Maria clenched her fists, swallowing her anger. She had seen enough. What Mr. Lawson didn't know was that Maria wasn't just a janitor. She was an undercover inspector sent to evaluate how the department treated its workers, and from what she'd witnessed, things were far worse than she expected. As she turned and walked out, Mr. Lawson smirked, thinking he had put her in her place. But he had no idea that by the end of the day, it wouldn't be Maria leaving, it would be him. Maria walked down the hallway, her mind racing. She had visited countless companies before, but this one stood out for all the wrong reasons. The way Mr. Lawson treated his staff was unacceptable, and from the uneasy glances of the employees, she could tell this wasn't the first time. People were afraid to speak up, trapped in a workplace where respect depended on your job title. She glanced at the clipboard hidden inside her supply cart, where she had already noted several violations: unsafe conditions, overworked staff, and now mistreatment. Each note made the case against Mr. Lawson stronger. But Maria wasn't finished yet. Back in the office, Mr. Lawson laughed with his colleagues, completely unaware that the woman he had just humiliated held the power to change everything. By the end of the day, the truth would come out, and when it did, there would be no more smirking. As Maria continued her rounds, she overheard quiet whispers in the break room. Two employees stood by the vending machine, speaking in hushed tones. "He denied her lunch," one of them muttered, shaking his head. "That's the third time this week. It's like he enjoys making people feel small." Maria kept walking, pretending not to hear, but the conversation only confirmed what she already suspected. Mr. Lawson's behavior wasn't just an isolated incident, it was a pattern. In the main office, Mr. Lawson leaned back in his chair, glancing at the clock. Another routine day, another reminder that he held the power here. His department ran on his rules, and if someone didn't like it, they could leave. He had built his career on control, making sure those beneath him stayed in their place. But just outside his office, Maria was finishing her report. The more she uncovered, the more certain she became his time in charge was running out. Maria stepped into the manager's office, her expression calm, but her presence commanding. Mr. Lawson barely looked up from his desk. "What now?" he sighed, clearly irritated. He didn't recognize her, still convinced she was just the janitor he had dismissed earlier. "I need a moment of your time," she said, her voice steady. She placed her clipboard on the desk. "There are some serious concerns about how this department is being run." Mr. Lawson scoffed, leaning back in his chair. "Oh, really? And who exactly do you think you are to question me?" Maria didn't answer right away. Instead, she pulled out her identification badge and set it on the desk. The moment his eyes landed on it, his smirk faded. His fingers twitched slightly as he realized what was happening. The room seemed to shrink around him. Outside, employees exchanged glances, sensing something big was about to happen, but none of them knew just how much everything was about to change. Mr. Lawson's face paled as he stared at Maria's badge. His fingers tapped nervously against the desk, but he forced a laugh. "An inspector. This is some kind of joke, right?" His voice wavered slightly, betraying his confidence. Maria didn't blink. "Do I look like I'm joking?" she asked, sliding the clipboard toward him. "I've documented multiple violations, mistreatment of employees, unsafe working conditions, and now clear discrimination. This department is under review." For the first time, Mr. Lawson looked truly unsettled. His eyes darted toward the hallway, where employees were now pretending to work but stealing glances toward his office. Then, just as he opened his mouth to defend himself, the door swung open. A woman in a sharp business suit stepped in, her expression unreadable. "Mr. Lawson," she said coolly, "I'm from corporate. We need to talk. Maria folded her arms, watching his world start to crumble. But the real fallout was just beginning. Mr. Lawson's confidence shattered as the corporate representative took a seat across from him. "We've been reviewing this department for weeks," she said, flipping through a file. "And thanks to Ms. Ramirez's inspection, we now have undeniable proof of misconduct." Maria watched as Mr. Lawson stiffened. "Misconduct," he repeated, forcing a laugh. "This is ridiculous. I run this place efficiently. You can't just take the word of some janitor." "She's not a janitor," the woman interrupted sharply. "She's a senior inspector. And we've reviewed the reports, spoken to employees, and seen the footage from the security cameras." His face fell. He hadn't realized they were watching. "Effective immediately, you're being removed from your position," she continued. "A full audit will determine further action." Maria turned to leave, but then the representative added, "And just so you know, Mr. Lawson, Ms. Ramirez isn't just an inspector. She's the one who recommended you for promotion years ago. She believed in you once." The weight of those words hit harder than anything else. As Maria walked out, she didn't look back. She didn't need to. His downfall was complete. As Maria stepped out of the office, the tension that had filled the workplace all day slowly began to lift. Employees exchanged glances, some relieved, others still in shock. The manager who had ruled through fear was finally gone. One of the workers hesitated before approaching her. "Thank you," he said quietly. "Most of us, we thought nothing would ever change." Maria offered a small smile. Everyone deserves respect, no matter their job title. By the end of the day, the news had spread. Corporate had assigned an interim manager, one known for fairness and professionalism. The toxic atmosphere that had hung over the department for years was beginning to fade.